time if I was a better fan of Broadway to be able to give you the exact rent, number of seconds in a year. But ultimately, like, we all have the same amount of time. That's the entire purpose of this conversation. We called it Beyoncé Your Time, being more productive as a busy lawyer. I'm here with Sarah Tetlow, who is the go-to on this. She's the CEO and founder of Firm Focus. She's the creator of the ARTT email productivity system, which we'll talk about today. She works closely with her clients to help them firmly focus on getting the right things done on a daily basis. She's an experienced productivity consultant, trainer, and speaker for attorneys and other professionals. Knowing that, because everybody else has known about that, she's presented over 100, she's given over 100 presentations virtually, in person, all over the United States. In October of 2021, she made her debut as an international speaker to international renown, if you will. She was the selected speaker to present her signature program From Frazzled to Focused to a group of over 60 lawyers in Mexico City. She's also one of 6 subject matter experts on Essentials of Productivity, which is a certified study?
Certificated study. Yeah, that's okay.
Certificated study. I was like, that is what it says. It just didn't make sense in my head that those were the words. Certificated study being released this month. Through her passion for focus work and her unique and sympathetic coaching approach, she creates a partnership with her clients that warrants charged behavior and healthier work habits. And I will say, Sarah's one of those people that, like, I don't know, 4 other people, like, you have to talk to her. So I'm so excited that we're here sharing this for you all about how to Beyoncé your time, how to be more productive as a busy lawyer. Sarah, welcome.
Yeah, thanks, Jordan. Thanks for having me. I love the colors behind you. You are such a colorful person. So excited to be here and have this conversation with you today.
Thank you. Normally I'm just told it's my language that's colorful. So I appreciate that it's the get up. No, but the story behind this piece of art, I was on a cruise. I don't remember Haiti, Grand Cayman, whatever. And this was being painted. And it was like the one piece of art that spoke to my soul. And so I was like, all right, I'm going to buy it. So I did.
I love those stories, those artwork that people have that has some story behind it. And in your situation, you were on a great trip, which I know you've done lots of those, and spoke to your soul. So why not? It's great.
And if we had the camera turned that way, it's a bunch of Star Wars and Marvel action figures. So, the many different sides of Jordan. No, that being said, though, I want to dive into this topic. We have limited time, and I mean that in life, not just in the presentation. I do want to talk about our last episode, though. Super cool one. We had Nick Lydorf on. Nick is a stand-up comedian whose first stand-up comedy thing debuted at #1 on iTunes for stand-up comedy. So this is not just a dabble or a side hustle. He's also a lawyer. And so Nick talked to us about finding your voice when it comes to your firm, using comedy in his sense to really develop that brand voice, that personal voice. Really super cool rundown. And he's funny. Like, there were some pretty funny moments. So check that out, but don't do it yet because we've got Sarah here. So I got a question before we dive into this. Mm-hmm. What was the life moment that made you want to be the email productivity system master, the subject matter expert on Essentials of Productivity? Like, what was the breakdown?
Yeah. I have 2 answers to this because one really sort of compartmentalize on the Firm Focus side of my business, which is helping lawyers with time management issues. That moment was literally, I was working at a law firm. I am located in the Bay Area. So I would get on BART every day, take the train, hour into the city on BART early in the morning. And then at the end of the day, reverse that back to the East Bay where I live. And there's a lot that kind of led up to this day. But on one specific day, I was on the train, I was heading home, and I really the build up to this was like, what am I doing? What do I love about what do I do? What am I missing? What do I hope to do for the rest of my career? And this light bulb went off in November of 2018 that was like, oh my gosh, I have always enjoyed helping lawyers with project management, task management, time management, attention management. And there's a business there. I know there's a business there. And so I remember that particular meeting because I happened to be heading to a session with the Small Business administration, the Small Business Development Center, to meet with a coach there to talk about what I was like, just a business I wanted to create. And it literally came to me on the train on the way to that meeting. Like I couldn't make this up.
You had the right amount of time to come up with it.
I had the right amount of time. And I was just really like, what am I doing? How can I put these pieces together? And it came together, and I walked into that meeting and I was so excited and energized to be like, this is what I think I'm meant to do. And I haven't looked back since then. So on the email side of things, because the email thing came out later. So I mentioned I help lawyers with project, task, time, and attention management. And that was really sort of the focus. And we'll obviously kind of talk deeper about that. But email management became a fifth prong about a year and a half later, when I had been working with clients. And one of the biggest pain points I kept hearing was email, and I would help people with email, but I didn't really like think of it as a system that I utilize until I was leading a group session and pulled up my inbox for some reason. And the group was like, whoa, hold the phone. What the heck is that? Because I'm looking at your inbox, Sarah, and I'm feeling calm. What do you do? And so that was sort of the pivotal moment of like, what do? I just do email. I mean, that, right? But it made me realize that I have a natural way of thinking of workflows, and email is communicating something to you because they want you to do something. And so that's basically what I'm teaching with that system, is how to think of email a little bit differently and more of a workflow so that you can control your inbox more effectively.
You ever read Cal Newport's A World Without Email?
I have not. I've read Deep Work, of course, but I have not read A World Without Email. So
I mean, all of his stuff, digital minimalism, that, like all of his stuff kind of focuses on this in some respect. But ultimately, the reason that modern email is the way it is because one day, I think it was IBM, just like turned on inner email, and like this is what came from it. Like there was no meeting of like what's actually the best use. And so I love, like I always call it's a to-do list you can't control. And your phrasing was similar to that. But like that perspective shift, I think really helps so many people understand what you're doing in the art email productivity system.
Yeah. If I can for a moment, because you just said something that I haven't heard someone say before. I've heard, email is a to-do list, but you just said email is a to-do list that you can't control. And the time management person in me is like, oh my gosh, I have to respond to this, because you shouldn't have a to-do list that you're not in control of. You shouldn't have a to-do list that you're not in control of. Like, we're always going to have things to do. Otherwise, how boring would that be? And how scary would that be if you're running a practice and you're like, okay, I finished everything. Let's see what's waiting for me tomorrow. That would be incredibly scary. And so part of what we do, and we have to do well, is project manage. And so every to-do list you have, you should be in control of. And that's a lot of what I work with clients on, is how do you manage your project list or your to-do list and maintain control of it? Because of course, especially lawyers, we want to maintain control. So your inbox should not be a to-do list that you do not have control of. You should have control of it.
So talk to me more about that. And I mean that from the standpoint of, if I make my to-do list here, I'm writing stuff on it. Whereas emails are coming in, are other people saying, hey, Jordan, what's the information about this? I need this information, fill out this form, whatever. And so like, I phrase that from the standpoint of like, you're not controlling what gets added to the list. Obviously you need to control how you respond to it, when you respond to it, who responds to it, etc.
Yeah, so that's a valid point. So you aren't controlling who is communicating with you, but you are controlling who you are prioritizing and letting in, and how you are prioritizing or scheduling the work. So maybe this is a good opportunity to get a little bit into what ART is, what the acronym is.
Absolutely.
Okay, cool. So ART stands for action, reference, tracking, trash. And let me explain what that is. So there's a productivity philosophy called the 5Ds principle, which says that with any action we're going to take, we can do the action, We can delay it, do it in the future. We can diminish it, break it down, and do it over time. We can delegate it, give it to somebody else, and then get something back, or we can delete it. So with email, it's really no different. The options are still those same choices, because email is somebody communicating something to you because they want you to do something. You fill out the form, respond, read something, listen to something, watch something, research something, draft something. But it's somebody who wants you to take action on every single email. That's why they have communicated something to you. And so in some cases, I have 3 easy buttons. Okay. I'm going to talk about the 3 easy buttons when it comes to email. The delete, that should be easy. When you can look at an email and spam got through, or it's just not something you care about. Whenever you see those emails, touch once philosophy, just delete it. And even better, if it's somebody that's getting through a lot, set up a rule that, unsubscribe or set up a rule. But basically, like, when the thought occurs to delete it, just delete it. That's an easy button. That's a touch once philosophy.
So can I jump in for a second before we go to the next one? Because somebody told me about this yesterday and I don't know why I didn't think about it. You can actually set a rule in your email where if the email you get has the word unsubscribe in it anywhere, you can delete it. You can do whatever you want with it. But they were talking about just moving it into another folder instead of in their main inbox. So listen, if you're a lawyer, you get randomly signed up for a ton of crap. So getting all those in one box out of your inbox, I thought was so smart, even then, to go back in and unsubscribe and delete and sign, whatever it is. But I thought it was interesting to pull it out of the inbox initially. And I never thought about that until yesterday.
What I love about what you just said, I thought you were going to say if it has the word unsubscribe in it, automatically delete it. And I would say most people will set up that filter because they still want control. They still want, what if it's something I want to read? What if something slips through? But what you're saying, and this actually leads to what my art system is a little bit, but what you're saying is let's just get it into a folder so that we can quickly glance and say, yep, I don't care about these. Oh, I do actually want to read that one. Let's read that or schedule a time to read it. So that's great. Yeah. So, okay. 1 of 3 easy buttons, 1 of the 3 touch once, delete, which we talked about. The second one is do. Now, the do is sort of a rule of thumb, David Allen. If you can get it done in, less than 2 minutes or maybe up to 5 minutes, just take care of it now. So if you can essentially look at that email, respond, check the box that, okay, done. There's no more action I need to do to take care of that particular correspondent, then take that action now. I do want to put a little caveat to this, that sometimes the reality is, even if it's a 2 to 5 minute response, sometimes we're working on a research project or we're running out the door to go to court or go to a meeting. And so even though it might be a quick do, we may not have the moment right now to do it. So I just want to throw that out there because I recognize that. And part of my art system is when you can do it, do it. But even a do email might end up becoming a delay email just by the nature of life. But when possible, if you can do an email now, that's easy button number 2. So delete, easy button number 1, do, easy button number 2. And in my art system, that's the trash and the action, right? So action and trash should be quick take care ofs. The third easy button is what I call reference archival. So that's the email where you already read it, or the client asked you a question, you answered, they replied with thank you. But now there's nothing more that you need to do with that email, but you may want to save it to reference it. So those emails have no action. It's the only type of email that no longer requires an action, but you want to save it. So when those emails are in your inbox again, take care of that right away, file it right away. Or if you're someone who prefers, at the end of the day to file email, that's fine too. But those are the 3 easy buttons. So the art system, action, easy button. Reference, there's 2 types of references. I talked about reference archival, which is the second easy button. The other type of reference in my art system is what's called reference actionable. That's your delay. So that's an email where you can't or won't do something with it right now, but you want to do something with it at some point in time in the future. So you want to reference that email to take action in the future. And some of the most common types of those might be like, you get a confirmation for a webinar you signed up for next Wednesday at noon, hotel confirmation, conference confirmation, flight. It might even be the client says, hey, Jordan, can we connect and talk about this matter? I'm available tomorrow at noon if you can give me a call. Okay, well, the email, there's a triggered action associated with that communication, but you can't take action until tomorrow at noon. And so you don't want to forget about it. But if you're using things like flags or marked as unread, what that does is you miss things because they fall out of your real estate, or you're using flags for various reasons. This is the most important thing I have to reply to today.
I've got the light green flag over here, the dark green on this one, the mauve flag for these things. Yeah.
Yeah. But the system fails, or you feel like it's just like screaming at you or telling you that you don't feel in control by using flags or marked as unread. So action, reference actionable, reference archival, tracking it, which is the first T in the ART system. I know I've kind of approached this a kind of weird way in ART, but
Listen,
tracking.
I've got my notes outlined on it. So
okay, awesome. Tracking is your delegate. So we normally think of delegate is.
Well, hold on, sorry. Before you go to delegate, so in terms of like the reference delay, like in Gmail, we're talking about like the snooze button. I mean, it's something as simple as that. Okay, cool. Actually,
if I can, on Gmail, they recognize this. So Gmail's actually a really good example. I'm an Outlook user. I like Outlook, but
I won't hold it against you. Don't worry.
My course is built in both Outlook and Gmail because those are the two main platforms that most people use. In Gmail, they have ART lined up for you because the snooze is your delay. The trash can is your trash. The snooze could also be your tracking, depending on, I'm about to get into tracking, but you can snooze it so that when you anticipate getting back what you need. But those little buttons, when you hover over an email, is basically saying, hey, we know what you do. You do it now, you do it later, you break it down and do it as a project. You need something back to do it, or you want to delete it, or you want to save it. And they've created all of these options for us in the software, but no one has ever, you said it yourself, when IBM rolled it out, it was like, here's this amazing tool. And as they've learned our behavior, they've put different components to email to support our behavior, but who has ever taught you what your behavior is?
Right. Well,
and that's where ART comes in.
The like email is beneficial from the asynchronous nature of I can send you an email and you get to it whenever. But the problem becomes lining those times up or turning things that need to be a two-way conversation into 400 emails, or I send you a 15-second email that's a 3-hour task for you to dive in and, so there's an imbalance of expectations a lot of the times too.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So getting back into what tracking is. So tracking is the delegate, and especially lawyers, we think of delegate as I gave out an assignment and then I need that assignment back, right? But when it comes to email, we delegate out a lot more. So your example earlier of a form to fill out, the person that sent that form delegated the next action to you. I need you, Jordan, to fill out this form. And then when you fill it out, you'll send it back to me and then I can do something with it. We delegate out invoices to be paid, declarations to be signed, projects, anything where the next action you've provided to somebody else and then you need something back is tracking. Now, the reason I call it tracking is in email, you send out that next action, but you want to keep track of that email to make sure you're not forgetting, oh, shoot, I sent out the declaration for Jordan to sign and we're filing today and I haven't heard from Jordan. And now I'm panicking because when we emailed it out to Jordan to sign it, we tend to forget about it. And we think, oh, that person will take care of it. They'll sign that document, or they'll do that assignment, or they'll pay that bill.
And look, if you send anything to me, famous last words. So,
Yeah, it's your email's your to-do list that is out of control.
I will be fair. I don't think I've ever been inbox 0, but I'm usually like inbox 10. So okay. I've got some control over it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's good. Yeah. Inboxes 10 is not bad. One other last thing about tracking that I like to point out to people, if some people have a behavior of CCing themselves on emails, that is your way of tracking. So you recognize I'm sending out an email. I want to, not everybody does this, but there are a lot of people that do. I don't want to forget to get back a response to this email or a signed document or whatever. So if I put myself as a CC or a BCC, it'll live in my inbox, which is the world I live in, and then I will remember. But what I've seen is that fails because you only get so much real estate on your screen. And without having some system in place to manage your inbox, that CC falls lower and lower and lower and lower. And suddenly it's off the screen and you're going to miss things. So in my art system, I also teach what to do effectively with those tracking emails. The only one I skipped over. So let me just bring everyone back home. So I talked about the 5Ds, and what art is action, do, reference, actionable is delay, reference archival is no more action, we're saving it. Tracking is your delegate, trash is your delete. And the one I skipped over is diminish. So diminish indicates it's a project. You again brought up another really great example, Jordan. A 3-second email is a 3-hour, or 10-second email is a 3-hour project. So diminish with email, we see it all the time. Hey, can you research this issue for me, please? Well, they don't say please in an email, but can you research this issue?
Hey, I try and say please in as many emails as possible.
I think it's an important point to say please, but let's just be real. We don't always see it internally. So I need you to research this issue and I need a response by tomorrow. That is a project. So that's a diminish. And with email, that falls a little bit differently into the art system, depending on how you're approaching that project. So typically what we see is it's going to end up being your reference actionable or delay. You might block off time to do it, or you might get that email and say, okay, I'm going to need to research that. And I think the honest truth is sometimes it's, I guess, tonight at 9 p.m. when I can sit down and have no distractions, I'll start researching that issue. So that is art. And that is the idea of the system. Just to close this up, I want to give an analogy that will help just tie in what I'm talking about. When you think of a mailbox, your physical mailbox at your home, what you do probably is you go out there either daily or every other day, you pull out your mail, you do something, you go through it. If it's clearly junk, you're probably throwing it away. If it's something important, you might open it right away and look at it. Maybe it's a bill or an invitation to a wedding, but you may not necessarily take action right now. And there's probably something you do to remember that bill or remember that wedding invitation. Some people have a sophisticated system. Like I use a planner and I paper clip and I'm crazy. You might post it on your refrigerator. You might have a section of your dining room where they stack, but you do something. And then you handle that action and then you might throw it away or file it. What you probably don't do is go out, get your mail, bring it in the house, throw a few things away and go, oh, this is a really important bill. I should probably seal it shut and go put it back in the mailbox.
Ooh, and I like this analogy.
Or I really should flag this wedding invitation because I don't want to forget to RSVP. Let me put a Post-it note on it and stick it back in my mailbox. That just seems ridiculous, I think, to anybody, right? We wouldn't do that, but we do it in our inboxes. The inbox is this storage unit. The flags are Post-it notes, but they mean nothing without a system. The mark is unread is just sealing it back shut, but it's not, there's no system there, right? And if you can visualize this mailbox that you keep going to every day, and then, what the mailman's putting the newest stuff on top, so you might open that stuff up, but then you're just shoving things back in. That's not a system. So what I create with art is there is a digital process that you can learn easily and apply it to your inbox so that it's no longer your to-do list that you don't have control over.
I love that.
Yeah.
Sorry, I don't know if I missed this. In terms of like, instead of leaving everything in your inbox, what's the better thing? Or do you talk about that something that you go into in the course?
It's something I go into in the course, but to touch on it here. So I will say I use folders in Outlook, labels in Gmail. That's the big distinction. We call them labels in Gmail, folders in Outlook. And what the course really dives into, and by the way, Jordan, this is not a one size fits all. So the course really, there's so the course is 14 modules long, and it starts at $159 for 30 days, full access, full course access. There's also a resource library where I add micro videos for organization, productivity, and technology tips that are 90 seconds to 5-minute videos that are outside of the course, because the course is really teaching that behavioral change.
Gotcha.
Deep of the course is modules 7 through 12. Modules 7 through 11 is teaching you art, starting with building your reference archival, then your action, your reference actionable, your tracking, your trash and diminish. And then module 12 is calendar, because calendar is a huge, huge, important piece of using your email software. I'm a huge believer in having a single calendar for everything you need to do as a person and tracking all of that. And it gets in a little bit into time blocking and stuff, which I won't digress on. So in module 7, for example, which is where you're building your reference archival, there's a worksheet pre-work that helps you figure out what your reference archival is going to look like. Because what mine is going to look like is going to be different than yours, depending on if you're someone who is going to file granularly or someone who's going to keep it pretty high level. But it helps you identify that. And just one last thing about the course is it really is designed to make the change as you're taking the course. So it's not something where you take the course and then you're like, great, okay, now I got to go get started. You are seeing the changes as you're going through it. And then just to touch on, because I mentioned I use folders and labels. So the workflow is using those folders and labels to create a system where you have a separation between your filing cabinet of the stuff that you want to save and you might want to reference, but you don't need to do any action. And then the open workflow of the emails that are indicating there's something you still need to do. I call those the action folders.
Gotcha. Super cool. And it's interesting. Like it's fascinating to me, the analogy you make between a normal mailbox, a real life mailbox, I don't know, a non-email mailbox, and how we handle email.
Yeah.
From the standpoint though of that, growth-minded law firm owner, where did they go wrong most frequently with this?
With managing their inbox?
Yeah, I mean, is it not having any sort of an idea how to manage it, or is there like a half measure that you see a lot of people doing? Like, what's the issue?
Well, and there are people out there that I've talked to that have a system. It could be totally different than what I teach in art, but it works for them, and that's great. They don't, if it's not broke, don't fix it. So you have that pool of people. On the other extreme, I've talked to people that are like, oh gosh, Sarah, if you could, I have 51,273 unread messages in my inbox, and they don't care. And I don't mean that pejoratively. Like, it works for them not to care. And that's okay with them.
I thought you meant like, there's no way. The odds of finding that email in the 51,000 is so low that it doesn't matter.
No, I think a lot that tends to, what I hear is if they really need me, they'll email again or they'll call me, and that's okay. And they don't mind operating that way. That gives me anxiety personally. But again, if that's not broken for you, that's okay. So what? And
also, sort of, God bless you that you're like okay with that. You are the least anxious person that I know. If you're like, I'll just let every email come into me 2 or 3 times before it's that important.
Yeah. That gives me anxiety. It really does. Because I'm like, I just feel like that's so reactive. But I think if you really are just like, my team gets, maybe it's that situation where we have filters in place where other people on the team get it. And so I couldn't possibly keep up with it all. And if it's really something that needs my attention, they'll address it to me or whatever. So when I'm answering this, I think I remembered your question. I'm really talking to the people in the middle, the ones that actually are listening maybe right now and saying, I have sort of a system, but it doesn't totally work. I miss flags, or I have way too many unread emails, or I'm using search multiple times a day. And usually I can find what I need pretty quickly, but sometimes it takes me a while, or maybe I'm trying to remember the person who sent it or the keyword, and I can't seem to remember. And I'm doing a million searches and I'm not finding what it is I'm looking for. And I just wasted 20 minutes doing that. So for those people, where did it go wrong was, I think, your question, right? Where did it go wrong? And that's a really interesting question. I don't think I've been asked. But I'm going to say, I think where it goes wrong is initially so usually we've got people that use the mark as unread as a method, or the people that flag as a method. And sometimes they do both. But they started using those tools to indicate something, right? I already said it earlier. Maybe a flag is like, oh, this is a really important email from a client that I need to get back to today. Let me flag it because I'm not going to do it right this minute, but I can't forget to do it later. And maybe early on that worked when we weren't getting so many emails. Now the volume of emails we get, we've got clients, we've got prospects, we've got colleagues, we've got vendors, we've got solicitors, we've got everything being emailed to us. And so with the real estate and the volume at which email is coming in, the flagged email no longer works, because if you're not managing your inbox effectively, then the real estate goes away and you're holding too many things in your head because the system doesn't work. So you flag the email. I've got to remember to reply to Jordan today. Let me flag the email. But because that system doesn't work, you're holding it in your head too.
Right.
And if you're holding things in your head, your brain is a hard drive and not a processor. And our brain, especially lawyers, where you are paid for what you are, the work that you're effectuating, your time, your knowledge, your skill set, your expertise. You cannot be holding in your head, I've got to remember to reply to Jordan's email. So the flags, in my art system, by the way, I do not use flags. I do not use flags. I do not use marked as unread. In fact, read and unread mean nothing to me. I just want to know how many total emails are sitting in my inbox, which means I still have to make a decision and do something about them.
There's so many different ways I want to go with this. This is the modern Sisyphus, like pushing the boulder up the hill only to come back the next day. So I guess, all right, let me throw out a pro tip and then let's go from there.
Sure.
You're mentioning the action being the do. One of the things, and then you referenced doing, diminishing. A lot of times that's like 9 p.m. research. One of my favorite things when those things come together is the schedule send button. Like you've done this task at 11:30 at night, but you have scheduled it to send at, 10 a.m. the next morning, or you got to an email super quickly, but then rather than responding to it immediately, you still scheduled it. Because I feel like there's an expectation you set of the other person. If you're at it immediately, you're there to have a conversation by email, which sucks. Or if you're doing it at 11 o'clock, you're accessible to client questions at all times of the night. So you're nodding your head. All right. So you're with me on this.
So you mentioned, sorry.
Yeah, no, go for it. You're the expert here.
You mentioned you're a Gmail user, right?
I am.
Okay. So Gmail, the delay send, I think works pretty well. I'm not going to go on a tangent of Outlook versus Gmail, but there are some things about Outlook I love a lot more than Gmail. And I'm like, Gmail drives me insane, but there are things about Gmail I think are better. This is one of the things about Gmail I actually really like, because it works with Gmail. So if you say, send this tomorrow at 9 a.m., Gmail's going to send it tomorrow at 9 a.m. because it's web-based. Unfortunately for Outlook users who use the desktop version of Outlook, which is my preferred method over the web version of Outlook, it's not as effective because you have to be in the application for it to send. So if I say send it tomorrow at 9 a.m. and I'm not logged in and I don't log in till 10 a.m., it'll send it at 10 a.m. But this is where, again, a lot of this is about control. I built art in a way too, where I'm like, I know we want control of things. And so there's a balance between having control, but not getting overwhelmed. So with Outlook users, it's a little bit less reliable because, again, you have to trust the system. And if Outlook fails you because you had to get that email out by 9 a.m. and then you weren't logged in, so therefore it didn't send, you will not ever want to do that again. So my preferred method for this is, I'm going to jump over to draft folder for just a moment. We have a folder called drafts. And a lot of what I also teach with art is the numbers that we're looking at on the left panel mean something. The bolded blue numbers, which are unread messages, those should be telling you a story. Hey, Jordan, you've got 7 unread messages in your inbox. That means something. It should mean, and I know earlier I said read and unread don't mean anything, but what I mean by that is you have 7 unread messages, which should be telling you since the last time you looked, you've gotten 7 messages that have come into your inbox. That's the story that we're looking at, right? But what your Outlook users may notice, if they haven't already noticed it themselves with me pointing this out, we also have a blue number in brackets. That is saying total number of items in that folder. And so where it shows up by default is in drafts and in junk mail. And there's a way to turn that setting on. So all of my action folders, I turn that on to show total number of items. I want to know how many total emails are with the word unsubscribe that showed up into that folder because I set up a rule. And look, I got 11 of those since yesterday. Let me go clear those 11 out. So with the art system, what I also train people is those numbers mean something because, again, I don't want to have to remember any of this. So let me tie this back together.
Yeah.
The drafts folder is there because it's supposed to tell you, hey, Jordan, you started an email and you didn't send it. And I see so many people that have 20 drafts, 50 drafts, 170 drafts, 800 drafts. And one of the things I give as homework is go through your drafts folder, because that folder is designed to tell you you started an email and you didn't send it. So bringing this back home for my Outlook users, if you clear out your drafts folder, you'll see no bracketed number. And then at night, you draft 5 responses. And then when you log in the morning, you go to your drafts folder and you go, yep, these are ready to send, and you send them out. And then it's back to 0.
You reread them and realize how terrible you were last night.
Yeah.
I find myself doing that. I'm like, oh my God, I was going to send this in an email, or like, this isn't grammatically correct, or this isn't even a real word, the perspective of time. All right. So I know we've got a little bit, 15 minutes left or so.
Sure.
We could have this conversation for hours. I'm fascinated. What's your stance on law firm owners delegating their email delegating their entire inbox? Like I have a EA or a VA that lives in my inbox, sends emails as me, whatever. Like, give me your thought on that.
Yeah, it can and often is a really great part of your process. However, this is what I like to say about this. What I see is people get so overwhelmed by their inbox and their email that they say, I just need my assistant, or I need to hire a VA to take care of it. But then when the VA comes in or the assistant comes in, they don't know what action you want to take with that email. Maybe it's something where every bar association email that comes in from your local bar association, you want to see it. You want to know what events are coming up, especially if it's in the section in the area that you practice in. But your VA is going to go in there with not much guidance and say, okay, well, obviously the client stuff is the most important. So let's get that in the attorney's face. And, these bar association stuff, yeah, we can go ahead and file those away or delete those or make them low priority. But then they miss an event that was one that was really important or interesting to them. And then they're upset at the VA for not knowing how to manage their inbox effectively. So it can be good, but first you have to know what your own behavior is, what's important to you. And then the ironic thing about it is you actually don't need the VA. If you recognize what is important to you, you just create the rules and filters to support that with the action folders that I'm recommending. So for example, a lot of times when I'm helping, and I have the course built out, but I also do private trainings and I do firm-wide trainings of art as well. And when I'm doing a private training and I ask people, okay, so this bar association, what is it you do with that? And they say, well, I want to see it, but obviously it's not the most important thing. So we might set up an action folder, then set up a rule that kind of similar to your unsubscribe recommendation, that all emails from the bar association go into an action folder so that whatever regular cadence makes sense to you. Is it daily? Is it once a week? You can run through them and say, delete, delete, delete. This one I'm interested in. Let me sign up for that webinar. Oh, this one I'm not going to go to, but let me save it in archival because I might be interested in that article later on or that content later on. So you don't actually need the VA because rules and filters can do what the VA is doing. But the first step is knowing what it is you want to do with the emails.
See, it's so interesting because like I always tell people, the better you have, like from a marketing standpoint, the better you have a system to market your firm, the easier it is to pass it off to anybody else. You know, like if I know I want these posts on these topics on these days on this social platform, but I love that you're coming back like, well, but from an email perspective, you can make that system in a way where you don't even need to then delegate it because you have it managed with the system.
Yeah.
Fascinating. All right. So what am I missing? Because like, I feel like we need to do a whole nother episode on calendars. So like, I don't even want to go there because I think that's like the yin to the emails yang, but
sure.
There's just so much here to cover. There's so much helpful stuff.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, what are you missing?
What else do we want to talk about? When we're talking, growth-minded law firm owner, email management, the ART system, we've got the 5 Ds, we've got the action reference, tracking trash. Like, what other pro tips, or what does it feel like when this is right? Like what's the transformation they go through? What makes the most sense in our last, 10 minutes?
Okay, so there's two parts. One is, what does it feel like? I love that question. What does it feel like when it's done? And I'm going to be totally honest, because when we talked at the beginning of this conversation about what was like the pivotal moment that this came to be. And I said, like, I was like, what are you talking about? This is just my inbox. Like, so I did not feel what it felt like until I started hearing people tell me what it felt like. And I got chills right now because I have heard, Sarah, this is life-changing. You've saved my life. You've taken me off the hamster wheel just by teaching them the ART system. And these are people who, and ART, by the way, is not just for lawyers, it's industry agnostic. And it's really platform agnostic. So while I have it in Outlook and Gmail, I've worked with Apple Mail, I've worked with Yahoo people, because it's just behavioral change and then using
AOL.
The platform.
Anybody still on AOL? Is that
I have clients that use AOL that have taken the Gmail course because you can apply the method. But yeah, there are people who are still on AOL.
God bless y'all. With dial-up internet, they still have a second phone line.
I don't think they're still using dial-up, but AOL still exists out there somewhere. You know what's funny though is you don't go to the grocery store and get the free CDs. Do you remember how we have to like recreate a new name to get AOL for free for another month? So anyway, I totally digress. So what I kept hearing from people is that this was finally a system that they could understand and apply with ease. And it made sense and they felt in control. And they also learned a lot of great tips on how to use Outlook that people just don't. We know how to use it, or Gmail, but we don't know how to use it. We don't know how to use all the stuff in the ribbon that is available to us. And I'm still learning. I'm learning all the time. I just had a client ask me a question yesterday. One of the things I bring in Outlook is a column called In Folder. And this is really great for people that use Outlook to run searches, because it shows you what folder those search results are in. And that column can stick, just like you have the subject and the from and the timestamp and the categories and the mention. But my client yesterday was like, Sarah, in this new upgrade, that column you put there for me is gone. And I said, okay, let me look into why, because it's actually a question I've asked myself, because mine goes away and I didn't bother to figure out why. But now that my client's interested in why it went away, I like to find that answer. And then I film the video on how to keep it. And then I add it to my resource library in my course. So I'm constantly learning and then adding it to the database where people who are in the course can continue to learn all these really cool things. So yeah, I hear back that it's really, really life-changing and something that they can adopt. Someone who had, my biggest transformation was a CPA who came to me with 1 million emails in her inbox.
1 million.
1 million in her Outlook inbox. I didn't even know the number would go that high.
Yeah.
And by the way, if anyone's saying, how do you know how many emails are in your inbox? Outlook, bottom left, it says a number of items. That's the total number that are there. And then it has a number of unread. So she had 1 million emails in her inbox. She learned art, applied art, and now most days she'll finish with less than 20 emails in her inbox. So
that's the point that I would just burn it all down. Like 1 million emails, forget it. I'm starting a whole new company. I'm getting a whole new email address. Everything is gone. Like there's no, fantastic.
Can I just touch on that for a quick second?
Yeah, of course. Absolutely.
Because this is a question I get from people a lot. Like, should I just burn it down and start new? No, I mean, that's not practical. You've got stuff in that. So I do say declare an email bankruptcy and just move it into a folder that's like my email bankruptcy. Like get everything out of your inbox and just put it in that folder. It's still in the database. That's what Outlook is. It's a database, right? Gmail's a database. It's still there. It's still searchable, but you're essentially saying like, get this out of my face so that what I can start with is something that I can adopt the art system and utilize it and feel like, okay, I can understand this. Because if you're trying to sort through 1 million emails, or even if you're trying to sort through 11,000 emails, like that's daunting and no one wants to do that. So that's not the first step. One last quick thing for the takeaway too, turn off notifications. If you are trying to get work done and you have a ping or a gray box, you cannot get work done. Email should not be pulling your attention away every 30 seconds. So turn off notifications.
I love that. Yeah. And look, the one thing I want to make sure we have a fine point on for the people that have their email bankruptcy, you can't go email bankrupt every week. I think the whole point of what Sarah's saying is like create the system, bankrupt the, pre-system, and then use it going forward so that you don't just, you're not triaging the problem. All right. I love it.
Yeah. Thanks for making that distinction. That is a very important one.
All right. So I want to talk about our next episode, and then we'll come back for Sarah's biggest nugget of wisdom, most important takeaway. So this episode, you're watching this on May 25th at 6 p.m. So our next episode will be on June 1st, be another one of our tentpole episodes. We'll have a super special secret guest coming on with their top 10 tips for law firm owners. That'll air next Thursday, June 1st at 6 p.m. I can't tell you who that is yet. So you'll have to come back to find out. That being said, Sarah, look, this has been amazing. I mean, just the analogy of real mail. What's the non-email? Physical mail. There we go.
Physical mailbox.
Like just that analogy is so instructive to so much of this on email. And I mean, look, I love the 5 Ds. I love the art system. It at least gives us fewer decisions to make when you're sitting on an email. Like, is this a now? Is this a later? Is this a never? Is this a somebody else?
Yeah.
But for anybody who's been listening for the last 55 minutes, if they remember nothing that you've said except what you're going to share now, what's the most important takeaway? What piece of advice do you want to give to as many law firm owners as possible to help them be the exhibit A of a successful attorney?
Yeah, excellent. We make 30,000 decisions every single day. So you have to have processes or systems in place. You know this, Jordan, with what you do at Legalese Marketing. It is one of the most crucial pieces to being successful, to making sure that you are maximizing your time in your career, in your life as a human being, as a lawyer. And so email is no different. You've got to create some systems and processes to make sure that you aren't letting it control you or create chaos and overwhelm.
And I love the way that you framed it from the decision standpoint, because I think that's so much of this.
Yeah.
Like when you go into work that day and you've got 50 emails, the decision to deal with it is that much harder. And then it's because it's not just the decision to look at emails or not, it's every email becomes, what do I do with it? And so I just love by setting this out, making those decisions as easy as possible. I don't know, maybe that's not the right word, but making those decisions as effortless, doable. I mean, makes so much of this so much easier. And then you can make the decision on, do I hire so-and-so or not? Then you can make the decision on, do I tell this client to take this offer or not? Like you can make the actual lawyer decisions when you're not stuck on, 700 different clicks of emails every morning with everything.
Yeah.
I love it. Sarah,
should I attend this bar association event or not? Like, just make that decision and no kidding.
And go on. Well, no, but I thank you so much for being with us. You, everybody who watched and listened to this, thank you so much. I know this is an episode that in the long term gives you back so much time. So I'm so happy that we had it now as we get closer and closer to the summer, where hopefully all of you listeners will have wonderful vacations with your family and those you care about, and not get stuck with a million emails in your inbox.
Yep.
That being said, we'll see you all back here next Thursday, June 1st, 6 p.m. for our next tentpole episode. In the meantime, we've got our Solutions for Lawyers by Lawyers Facebook group. And I actually tabbed, it's not specifically email. We have a time management tip conversation that we had a couple weeks ago that is tabbed at the top, pinned at the top, starred at the top, whatever Facebook calls it these days. So there's some pretty cool stuff in there. And I definitely want to add some of the things from Sarah today. But with that being said, everybody, have a great week. Sarah, thank you so much for being with us.
Excellent. Thanks, Jordan. Happy to be here.
And I almost forgot the most important thing. For everybody watching this who is smart enough to want to get to work with you, connect with you, hear more of what you have to say, what's the best way for them to get in touch?
Sure. So LinkedIn is one option. You can find me, Sarah Tetlow, at LinkedIn or on LinkedIn. You can also go to firm-focus.com. That is my Firm Focus website, and reach me on the contact page there, where you are also welcome to schedule 30 minutes with me. Just pick my brain or find out more about what distractions, interruptions you have. And then finally, our email is arttemail.com. That's the site that the course lives on, where you can get more information about that.
Awesome. And for anybody who is listening to this as the podcast, Sarah's last name, Tetlow.
Yes.
Everything else is spelled correctly. There's no random characters or missed vowels or letters in it. But yeah, just make sure Tetlow for the LinkedIn connection. All right, everybody. See you next week. Hopefully see you next week with a more manageable email inbox. That's the hope.
It can be done.
Certainly.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Exhibit A Attorneys. If you're interested in becoming the Exhibit A of a successful attorney, please check us out at legalesemarketing.com, EASE.